In May of 2021, the two media giants Warner Bros. And Discovery agreed to merge together and create Warner Bros. Discovery. Warner Bros. Is best known for its high-budget Hollywood franchises such as the DC Universe, Harry Potter, and its premium HBO offering. It also owned live news and sports channels including CNN and TNT Sports. Discovery is best known for its unscripted non-fiction reality television programming, such as 90 Day Fiancé and Shark Week. Over the past decade or so, legacy media companies have been trying to cope with the disruption caused by Netflix. With online streaming providing a superior value proposition, fewer and fewer American households are willing to pay for cable television. The main rationale for combining the two companies was that they can combine their respective streaming services to have a greater selection of shows and thus compete better against Netflix. The combined company also promised to save billions of dollars by consolidating corporate overhead and laying off redundant employees. While this sounds great in theory, it hasn't worked out so well in practice. Since the merger was announced in May of 2021, the company's stock price has declined by 2/3, wiping out $60 billion of market capitalization. If you notice, a few months before the merger was announced, Discovery's stock price had a bizarre spike. This was due to a massive manipulation scheme orchestrated by the now disgraced hedge fund manager Bill Huang. This is not really relevant to the story, but just thought I'd mention it. As we can see, the Warner Bros. Discovery merger hasn't really worked out. At least not if we just go by the stock price. In June of 2025, just 3 years after the two companies merged, Warner Bros. Discovery announced plans to split itself into two independent companies. This begs the question of why they merged in the first place. In this video, we'll look at why Warner Bros. Discovery has underperformed expectations. Then we'll look at why they're splitting up, and what this will mean for their streaming service going forward. In addition to employing actors and scriptwriters, Warner Bros. Also employs back-end developers who develop and maintain their HBO Max streaming app. In today's increasingly digitalized world, almost every company needs software engineers. According to Stack Overflow, the median salary for back-end developers in the US is $170,000 per year. Thanks to today's sponsor, Boot.dev, it's never been easier to become one. Boot.dev is an innovative learning platform that is designed to teach you back-end web development from start to finish in programming languages including Python and SQL. Learning computer programming takes a long time, and coding isn't known to be the most exciting of activities. That's why most people don't do it. But Boot.dev is made to look like a role-playing game. You learn programming by earning XP, leveling up, and completing quests. If you're ever stuck, Boots, the AI wizard bear, is trained to help you. And he doesn't just tell you the answers. He asks you questions that will deepen your understanding. It's such a brilliant platform because it forces you to learn programming while tricking you into thinking you're just playing a video game. The quests are designed to keep you creating as much code as possible to set you up for success in a web development career. Boot.dev costs a tiny fraction of a university degree, and every lesson is viewable in the free guest mode, so you can try before you buy. So if you want to learn a useful skill or set yourself up for a new career, just click the link in the description below. You can try out some courses for free, and then use my code to get 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. And now back to the video. Warner Bros. Discovery owns a huge number of different brands, so it can be a bit difficult to analyze them all. Let's start off by looking at the company's three revenue segments: streaming, studios, and global linear networks. All three segments are interconnected. The streaming segment includes the company's two streaming services, HBO Max and Discovery Plus. Discovery Plus is the cheaper of the two, with the ad-supported version costing just $6 per month. It includes mostly unscripted reality TV shows, things like 90 Day Fiancé and Shark Week. HBO Max is the more premium of the two. It includes almost everything on Discovery, plus high-budget scripted shows and movies, such as Game of Thrones and The Penguin. The streaming segment doesn't actually produce any content. All of the content is produced in the studios and global linear network segments. You can think of the studios segment as the high-budget Hollywood part of the business. They make movies such as Dune and high-budget scripted television shows like Game of Thrones. The movies are typically shown in theaters first and then made available on HBO Max after the theatrical run. The studio segment also makes movies that go directly to HBO Max and are never shown in theaters. The studio segment makes various television shows. Some are shown on cable TV, some are put on HBO Max, some appear on both. The global linear network segment includes live news such as CNN, live sports, and unscripted reality television such as TLC. All of these shows are put on cable television. Some of the reality television shows are put on the streaming services as well. Another way to think about it is that the studios and global linear networks produce content. There are various ways to monetize the content. There are external means of monetization. You can sell the content to pay TV distributors like DirecTV and Xfinity. You can monetize movies by showing them in movie theaters. Warner Bros. Can monetize its own content internally by showing it on their streaming services. Generally, movies are monetized externally in movie theaters and internally on the streaming services. Scripted television shows are monetized externally on pay TV and internally on streaming services. Live news and sports are monetized almost exclusively through pay TV. They are generally not put on the streaming services. Reality TV is monetized both through pay TV and on the streaming services. Historically, global linear networks has represented the majority of the company's revenue. This is traditional cable and satellite television. As consumers increasingly cancel their cable subscriptions, linear revenue has been steadily declining. In the 3 years since the Warner Bros. Discovery merger, closed linear networks revenue has declined by 21.5%. The studios segment includes both movies and cable TV. The studio segment has increased 5.5% since the merger closed. During this same period, the streaming segment has seen a 16% increase in revenue. It was always expected that the linear television business would decline. The idea was that growth in the streaming business would offset declines in linear television. Unfortunately, this has not been the case. Total revenue has declined 7.5% over the past 3 years. Linear television is inherently more profitable than streaming. Just look at the prices. A cable television package can cost $70 or even $80 per month, and there is a massive ad load. The ad-supported version of HBO Max costs $10 per month, and the ad-free version costs $17 per month, a small fraction of the cost of cable. The relatively low price point has caused many streaming services to struggle with profitability. Now let's look at adjusted EBITDA, which is a non-GAAP measure of profitability. The linear network segment has always been the most profitable, but has been rapidly declining. Over the past 3 years, linear networks adjusted EBITDA has declined by 36%. The profitability of the studio segment varies significantly from quarter to quarter based on the performance of their movies. Back in 2022, the streaming segment was losing money. In 2023, it was barely break even. In 2024, it finally became significantly profitable. In the first 12 months after the merger closed, Warner Bros. Discovery generated $9.4 billion of adjusted EBITDA. In the 12 months ended Q2 2025, they generated $9.2 billion of adjusted EBITDA. The improved profitability in streaming has not been enough to offset the decline in the linear business, so overall profitability has declined slightly. Now let's talk about the streaming segment. It used to lose money, but became profitable in 2023. But what does it mean for the streaming segment to be profitable? The main cost of any streaming service is producing the content. As we explained earlier, the streaming segment doesn't make any of its own content. The content is taken from the studios and linear network segments. We need to understand how these costs are accounted for. These are accounted for as internal transfers. For example, the studio segment produces the show House of the Dragon. It probably costs about $200 million to film an entire season. House of the Dragon is an HBO Max original series. It is only shown on streaming, not on cable television. The streaming segment buys the show from the studio segment. Because the show is made specifically for HBO Max, the pricing is done on a cost-plus basis. HBO Max might pay the production cost plus a little bit more to cover some of the studio segment's overhead costs. This is an internal transfer between two segments of the same company, so no actual money changes hands, but you need to record a cost on paper so as to calculate the profitability of the streaming segment. HBO Max owns House of the Dragon forever, but people aren't going to watch it forever. In the first year, a lot of people will watch it. The second year, fewer people will watch it. Eventually, it'll become old news and almost nobody will watch it. For each show, HBO Max has to estimate its lifespan. The cost of the show is amortized across its estimated useful life, which is typically a few years. House of the Dragon is relatively simple because it's an HBO Max original series. It was custom made for HBO Max. What about 90 Day Fiancé? 90 Day Fiancé is produced by the Global Linear Network segment. Each season probably costs about $5 million to film. The Linear Network segment licenses the show to cable and satellite television carriers such as DirecTV and Xfinity. This is where the majority of the revenue comes from. They also sell to the streaming segment so it can be shown on HBO Max. The streaming segment will not pay for the entire production cost. They instead conduct a so-called arm's length transaction. Warner Bros. Executives sit down and ask themselves, hypothetically, if we were to sell this to a third-party streaming company such as Netflix, how much would they be willing to pay for it? Maybe they'd be willing to pay $1 million. The price will certainly be far less than the production cost because it's a non-exclusive license. This hypothetical market price is what they'll use for the internal transfer accounting. When Warner Bros. And Discovery merged in 2022, one of the main rationales was that they can combine their two streaming services into one. The combined streaming service will have a greater breadth of content, and thus be more attractive to consumers. In May of 2023, they launched their combined streaming service and called it Max. The HBO brand is associated with epic high-budget shows like Game of Thrones and Succession. The company feared that this is too niche of an appeal. Max was a more neutral brand name that could house both Succession and 90 Day Fiancé. As it turns out, the company overestimated the usefulness of Discovery's unscripted reality shows. You might play 90 Day Fiancé in the background when you're bored, but these mindless shows are not particularly compelling. Upon reviewing internal data, they found that HBO-branded shows such as The Last of Us and House of the Dragon were still responsible for the lion's share of subscriber growth. The Max brand only lasted for about a year. In May of 2025, they changed the name back to HBO Max. When Warner Bros. And Discovery merged in 2022, the two companies had 92 million subscribers between HBO Max and Discovery Plus. Today, they have 126 million subscribers, an increase of 36%. Back in 2022, their average monthly revenue per subscriber was about $7.50 per month. In 2023, they increased prices for their ad-free tiers. Average revenue per subscriber peaked at $8 in the fourth quarter of 2023. Throughout 2024 and the first half of 2025, their number of subscribers increased significantly. This coincided with a substantial decrease in average revenue per user. So what's going on? Let's look at the breakdown of domestic versus international subscribers. For the past 3 years, the number of domestic subscribers has remained stagnant at roughly 55 million. HBO Max has been available in the US since 2020. They've already reached saturation, and there's not much more room to grow. Almost all the subscriber growth has come from international markets. HBO Max has been gradually expanding to other countries over the years. Before launching their own streaming service, Warner Bros. Had already sold exclusive licenses to broadcast many of its shows in certain countries. In a lot of cases, they had to wait for these licenses to expire before they could launch the streaming service in that country. That's why the international expansion has taken a long time. HBO Max wasn't available in most of Europe until 2022. It wasn't available in most of Southeast Asia until 2024. A lot of these countries are much poorer than the US, so the pricing needs to be commensurately lower. The average revenue per subscriber in the US is approximately $11 per month. The average revenue per international subscriber is only $4 per month. Over the past 3 years, the number of subscribers has increased 36%, from 92 million to 126 million. During this same period, quarterly revenue has only increased 16%, from $2.4 billion to $2.8 billion. That's because almost all of the growth has come from the international markets. In an effort to improve profitability, the company has greatly reduced its content spending. Remember that cost of revenue for the streaming segment consists almost entirely of amortized content production costs. In the first full year after the merger, they had $8 billion of content costs. In the most recent 12 months, they only spent $7.2 billion. The company understands that they've pretty much reached saturation in the US. They're trying to spend as little money as they can on new content so as to keep their existing subscribers happy. Instead of chasing growth at all costs, Warner Bros. Discovery has been more focused on paying down debt. When they merged, both Warner Bros. And Discovery were heavily indebted. The combined entity had a debt load of $50 billion. Over the past 3 years, they've used almost all of their free cash flow to pay down debt, which now sits at $30 billion. Now we can start to understand why the company's stock price has performed so poorly. The linear television business, which represents the lion's share of the profits, is declining and will likely continue to decline for the foreseeable future. The streaming business is now profitable, but it's already reached saturation in the US and is far less profitable than the linear business. The future growth prospects for the overall company don't look great. In June of 2025, Warner Bros. Discovery announced plans to split itself into 2 independent companies. One of them will be called Global Networks, the other will be called Streaming and Studios. The Global Networks company will include pretty much all of the reality TV channels. It will also include Discovery Plus. This is the small streaming service Discovery had since before the merger. Most of the properties in the Global Networks company come from the original Discovery. The only exceptions are CNN and TNT, which were originally owned by Warner Bros. The Streaming and Studios segment is the opposite. All of the properties in this company originally came from Warner Bros. They're basically undoing their previous merger. When the two companies merged back in 2022, they said it was a great strategic fit because Discovery's unscripted reality shows would make a great addition to the HBO Max streaming service. This was a complete and total failure. The likes of 90 Day Fiancé and Shark Week provided very little benefit to HBO Max. They should have never done the merger in the first place. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about Warner Bros. Discovery? Do you think they should split up? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.